Welcome to A Real Affliction, BPD Culture and Stigma, a podcast that explores how we experience, treat, write about, advocate for, and conceptualize borderline personality disorder. My name is Cynthia Gralla. I'm a writer and teacher with a history of BPD. So this is a solo episode that I'm doing without a script. I've never done this before. It might be a complete disaster that will never be repeated, but I'm going to try because I've posted about getting a PhD with BPD on social media, on my Instagram account, A Real Affliction BPD, my Substack. And every time I talk about it, I get reactions from people who say, yeah, I love hearing about this because I'm thinking about going back to school. I don't know if I can. And it made me realize that it's important for me to talk about a very real possibility of getting a higher education degree with BPD in as many forms as possible. So I thought I'd make this off the cuff podcast where I share what I've learned from my own experiences and very much trial and a lot of error about things to keep in mind and things that could help if you want to go to school, to college, to university, to graduate school, to business school, whatever. It's possible, but these are the things I would keep in mind. I completed my PhD in comparative literature at the University of California, Berkeley I was in school from 1998 to 2006. It sounds like a really long time, I know, and it is. The way that department worked was if they accepted you after your bachelor's degree, you were accepted for the doctoral program. They weren't accepting, some programs accept you for the master's and then for the PhD. Nope, with Berkeley, you were committing to a 7-year program. And I'll get to my thoughts on that in a minute. It was a 7-year program, but actually most people took 10 years to complete it. Because the thing about comparative literature is that you'll get tested on reading in different languages. So I read literature in English, Japanese, and Spanish. All that stuff takes a lot of time. You also have to get a very firm background in literary theory, philosophy, literary histories, cultural history in your areas of specialization. So it takes a long time. When I look back at it now, again, I see a lot of trial and error, things I floundered because I just had no information at the time. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So the first time my mental health interrupted my schooling was in middle school. I joined 6th grade late because I was in a hospital getting treated for anorexia. And it was actually really sweet because that was the start of middle school. I was in the gifted program and the teacher had kind of told people, I think she kind of prepared them that someone was in the hospital. They were going to be rejoining the class or joining the class late. And people were really kind to me. There were some people I knew from elementary school, some people I was meeting for the first time. Shout out to Samantha, who is still my friend. She was my best friend throughout high school, and she and her father really helped me survive that period. So I met her, and I found a lot of stability in school, even though I missed some. And then I left 6th grade early because I went back in the hospital. And then I did well for a few years in terms of making it to school. At the end of 10th grade, I had a kind of breakdown and I missed school again. I felt like I wasn't able to go. And my mom hospitalized me for 10 weeks, basically so I could finish school and supposedly get some help. And then 11th grade was pretty much fine, but 12th grade, I started missing school again. So now I look back and I see that even though I did really well in my studies, the absences were a flag that I was suffering and I needed help. But this was in the late 80s, early 1990s, and no one was suggesting I had BPD. It wasn't something that was widely known. We didn't have WebMD. And my mom is one of the reasons I always wanted a higher education and that I succeeded in getting one because she has a doctorate in physics and she went to Harvard for undergrad. You know, it's a lot to live up to, but I would love it when I went to the university with her. I felt safe there. And I see now that my mom honestly thought that once I got to college, I would feel better. even though by senior year I was starting to fall apart. But luckily, I applied to Amherst College in Massachusetts. It's a very prestigious liberal arts college, and I was accepted early decision. So even though I didn't even take the AP test in my English class, which was my favorite class, I couldn't even get to that advanced placement test because I was feeling so awful. I still got into a good college. My mom said, "You're going to be okay." And I think that's the first lesson. School won't solve your problems, and that's okay. If you feel like it's what you want to do, you can work around your problems, but they're not going to go away, which probably most of you already know this, but I really didn't know. And my mom didn't either because she didn't know. She thought I was just depressed or had anxiety or something. The other thing I would say to everyone is it's okay to take longer to finish school, and it's absolutely okay to take time off. Now, there are some asterisks around that. For example, if taking time off will make it much more expensive to you and you can't afford that, if you lose a scholarship, yeah, then that's becomes more difficult. And in that case, I would definitely advise that you talk to a student advisor. There are so many people at universities whose job is to help you. Please reach out to them if you're struggling, if you think I'm going to need to take a semester off or I'm going to need to take a smaller course load, that is possible. I did take time off. My second semester in college, I had another breakdown and I left, but then I came back. And then because I'd left, I had to fit basically 7 semesters into 6 because, these private liberal arts colleges in the US are ridiculously expensive. So you can't do an extra semester. So I kind of made it harder for myself rather than doing a timeout that was really for me. And I would say that if you ever drop out of a semester, then it's a sign that you need to recalibrate, you need some people who can help you with treatment. Another thing I've learned is that it's okay not to be able to picture finishing whatever program you start. So I graduated on time for my BA, and then I took 2 years off. I worked in Japan for a year. I worked in New York City for a year in the amazing Flatiron Building. And then I got accepted to Berkeley. And so when I got accepted to that 7-year program, it was what I wanted. I mean, in the humanities, there's kind of no point getting in a master's. It's kind of debatable whether there's a point getting a PhD these days, although it is one of the decisions in my life that I think was so right. I have made some crap decisions, even recently. So being able to look back and say, yes, getting a PhD, it has allowed me opportunities. I've taught and gotten research grants and lived in Poland and Japan. I now teach at 2 universities in Canada. It was really worth it, but I had no idea how I was going to finish 7 years. So my program at Berkeley had an option where you could take the master's, a test to get your master's degree. But since they didn't have a terminal master's for complet, you didn't even have to do that step. But I did that step after my second year because I knew that I might not finish the PhD. So having that made me feel like at least I'll have that done. And I think that was a really good step for me to break it down into little steps was better. So that might work for some people. If you can break it down, that can help. But don't worry if you think, I'm not sure I can get through it. No one's sure if they can get through a 7-year program. Even people I might have been the only person in my cohort of 10 students with BPD. I'm not sure, but everyone was full of doubt and had depression. Grad school is a really stressful time. And that's another thing. It's okay to feel imposter syndrome. The year I matriculated at Berkeley had more Nobel Prize winners per square mile than anywhere else in the world. So you're surrounded by people who are far, far, far more intelligent than you will ever be. And I think really that's what grad school should be. It should teach you humility. It should teach you what you don't know. But when you get there, you're slammed with that knowledge all at once. It's like that scene in The Matrix where you learn Kung Fu in an instant. No, you learn that you don't know Kung Fu in an instant. That's what the first year of grad school is. So it is going to make you doubt yourself, BPD or not. That's okay. You just have to stay with it and know that everyone, honestly, everyone I know, tenured professors, doesn't matter. Everyone I know in academia has imposter syndrome to some extent. Or if they don't, they probably should. A few other tips. It's really best not to make things harder for yourself. And I don't want to go too much into it, but I will say that when I was going to school, college and grad school in the late 90s, early 2000s, this was very pre-Me Too. And academia can be pretty predatory, especially then. I had one professor who asked to meet me to talk about my paper, and he asked me to run away with him. There is evidence that people with BPD are far more susceptible to sexual coercion. And I wasn't coerced in that incident. I just left. But I think that there are people who will pick up on that you are vulnerable. I had another incident to navigate in grad school as well, where I felt feelings too. And I knew, even BPD or not, I knew I was making a mistake and that I was going to lose this person. I wouldn't be able to work with them anymore. But I did it. Don't make my mistake. None of those things are worth it. Try to stay focused on your degree in any way that you can avoid making things harder for yourself. That's the best thing to do. The other thing that I feel really strongly about is that you should go to class. I've had students of my own who've self-identified with BPD and other mental health issues, and they'll email me and say things like, well, I really don't feel like I can come to class today. And when I first started teaching, we all have a learning curve with teaching as well as with studying. I would say, well, your mental health is the most important thing. But I don't say that anymore. And the reason is because I did miss classes, especially like in my senior year of high school and during college, not so much in grad school, but in grad school, you only have to attend a seminar like once a week. But I learned from that skipping class can make you feel isolated and guilty, and it makes you fall behind, and that creates more stress. So what I say is to my students is you don't have to participate, but try to come. It's okay if you can't, but I really advise it. And I think one thing you can do is email your professor and say, I am not feeling well. I'm going to come to class. But if you could avoid calling on me, I would really appreciate that. I think most of them would appreciate that. Along similar lines, check with your university's accommodation office. See if you can get some kind of support for BPD. Depending on the university, what it looks like might vary, but it might be things, especially in undergraduate school, it might be things like getting more time on tests, on exams, more time for assignments. I don't know for grad school. Grad school is very different, and it is like it's preparing you for the professional world. So I don't know what accommodations look like that there. But I know that for undergrads, you can get permission to occasionally skip class, maybe to opt out of group assignments. But again, I would recommend not doing anything that isolates you too much from your peers. It's that finding that balance, what relieves the stress, but doesn't increase your avoidance of things. And that's a hard line to find, even for me now. Finally, I would just say that even when you get your higher education degree, you're done. You've worked so hard. You've overcome so many obstacles, and you've displayed so much resilience. Almost everyone has a post-degree crash, and that's okay. Because just like going to school isn't going to solve your problems, leaving school with a degree won't make everything okay. You still have to navigate yourself, other people. And again, BPD or no, those are huge challenges in early adulthood. So I just wanted to share these tips. I really believe that it's important for us to support each other by sharing our success stories, but also our failures. And the research shows that people with BPD have above average intelligence. And God knows we have all kinds of resilience. So I know you can do this if it's what you want, but just take care. Don't rush. It's not a sprint to the finish line. And I wish you the best of luck, and reach out to me if you have questions. Take care. Best of luck to you.